Welcome to Mastering Life's Adventures, an educational podcast about tapping into your true self, the soul, your soul, the substance of your life, to discover what life's ups and downs are really about, and how to have a greater sense of purpose, peace, joy, and fulfillment. I am Dr. Judith Holder, your host, coach, psychologist, fellow seeker who enjoys diving into the connections between spirituality, psychology, wellness, and your everyday life's adventures. All preparing and polishing you like the facets of a magnificent diamond to be your best self. If you're craving more from your life, you are in the right place. Come, let's journey together and transforming what you know into who you really are. Mastering Life's Adventures begins now.
Hi, I'm back to talk about this is the 100th episode. Do you believe it? 100. And it's been remarkable to think about where I was when I first began this podcast, and I knew nothing about podcasting or very little about it, to where I am now and have garnered a lot of information. It's given me an opportunity to reflect and think about these different topics that are kind of a natural, organic process of meditating, reflecting, thinking, asking my inner self what would be helpful for people to hear, asking other people. But more importantly, it really has come through me brainstorming with my own inner self about what are the things I've noticed as a psychologist, as a coach, as a family member, as a professional, as a person who's curious and wanting to help people to continue to grow and advance and they're respective about things, or plant that seed for it growing as you reflect and you think about some of the things we've talked about in the solo episodes as well as in the guest episodes. I've had some great guests on my show, and I've been really honored to have the dialogue and the conversations with each one of them that brought a new perspective, a new era that is important for us to think about and look at. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the guests. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the episodes that I came up with that I think has made Mastering Life's Adventures, being your best self through soul evolution, such an interesting and intriguing way of thinking and being as you've moved with me through up to this point of the 100th episode. And I asked my friends too about what should I do for the 100th episode. I don't like complicated things. I like things to be simple. I like things to be to the point. And so one of the things that we may do with one of my colleagues is a question and answer. And I'm going to tie that into the 100th episode. And so stay tuned to that. That's coming. But this was talking about some of the things that I thought were important to be aware of when we talk about soul evolution, because this is all about how do we have the awareness of our spiritual nature and the nature that is the Atman, the I am presence, the Christic qualities and energies that Jesus demonstrated, that Buddha demonstrated, that Zoroaster in ancient times and demonstrated. They say, how do we get that attunement with our inner self and stay in that attunement? And how do we continue to evolve and continue to grow and know that life is just not here to have joy and happy and being frivolous? Yes, joy and happiness are important elements to our living of our life, but we also, each soul, I believe, is born on purpose. There's a reason for our existence. There's something for us to learn. There's something for us to garner. And that sometimes we lose sight of that because the world is so attractive, like a magnet pulling us out of ourselves to the hustle and bustle of the world, that we lose sight of the fact that we keep on having this certain experience. And it seems to keep on coming up with this type of person in this type of situation. But we don't connect the dots, so we don't ask the question, why is that? Does it keep on coming up? What is it that I might need to learn in that experience so the situation doesn't have to keep on coming up? Because I think there is a rhythm and a timing in the universe. There are cosmic laws that exist as well. And in those laws, such as the law of cause and effect, and the law of attraction that you've heard a lot about, and probably in the past. The laws of realizing of transmutation, that we have the opportunity to transmute. We have an opportunity to change things, that things are not permanent down here on planet Earth, that they are malleable, that they can change based upon our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors, things that we do on a regular basis that allows us to be like the neuroplasticity of the brain, where there is also the neuroplasticity of spirituality, of our spiritual growth and our spiritual advancement. We have to be attuned, conscious, aware, be willing to look at things from a different perspective, a different lens. And so when I talked about the barriers and roadblocks to soul progress, which one of the earlier episodes that I did a series on last year, I was really focused around what are these key emotional elements, ways of thinking, ways of being that end up creating this really wall to our progress that creates this kind of feeling as if we get stuck. We went through those. We went to talk about some of those areas, and I invite you to go back and listen to some of them that we talked about. But then we also went into looking at ways that we want to advance ourselves, and how can we do that with these superpowers. And we talked a little bit about superpowers. And then a few episodes focused on soul sessions, giving my thoughts about things. And then a couple of episodes each month that focused on specific areas with guests coming in, talking about their perspective, about children, about teens, about how they evolved, giving their stories about how they have grown. And in the process of giving their experiences about how they have grown, it's really getting into the notion that their soul is growing as well, whether they're aware of not, that their soul is making advancements. And being able to really ties into what the soul's need is, just as you're the guest talking about wanting to help children to be really attuned to the fact that they can strive to do more and be better. Well, that's what the soul wants too. My desire in this Mastering of Life's Adventures podcast is to integrate how we can have awareness of the soul in our everyday life, in our everyday thinking and feeling and actions and behaviors and interactions, that having the soul in mind, the substance of your life, having that in mind when you're entering into conversations or experiences, or having certain circumstances that happen to you that create a particular trigger or warning within you, that you're not attuned to the fact that your soul is actually trying to warn you about something that's coming up, or something that you're doing that's not advantageous to your greater good. And when we invite the soul by asking every day, come, help me be aware, help me be attuned to what the lessons you wish me to learn this day. It's as if the soul's path is united with the virtues and qualities of the Christ. And Jesus, if you've heard me say in the past, is here to be, was here, and I believe in many ways continues to be with us, to teach us how a particular path, a particular way of being, just as Buddha taught a particular way and path. And each of them talked about this issue of non-attachment. They talked about it maybe in different words, but not being so attached to this human creation, this human stuff that happens to us, and see it for what it is and keep it in its place, and not be detoured by what other people feel or what other people think, so much so that it topples us. It topples our sense of self. And knowing that we're grounded, the soul is grounded in something greater than this human experience that we're having, is grounded in God. The geometry of divinity is what my father used to say. God is the geometry of divinity. There's so many different dimensions and geometric patterns that make up God that is mind-blowing in many ways. And what we're trying to understand through our observation, through our quietness, through our reflections, and asking curious questions, of ourselves and those that are around us. We're trying to get a better awareness of the immensity of God in our life through nature. And my father was very much, my father was great. He was ahead of his time. He would look at the clouds and see the formations and see what's forming and how that related to the inner self and how things form within ourselves and in nature. We have so many ways in which God is trying to speak to us. But do we hear God speaking to us? Do we see experience that's happening to us as God trying to teach us something? Or do we see it more as punishment? When we tend to see things more as punishment, which is, I don't think is God's way. He says there's certain laws that you have to follow in the universe. And when you come outside those laws, then you automatically get hurt, pain, disappointment, anger, frustration on these negative feelings. But that's not because of God trying to do it to you. It's the law of what is called the impersonal aspects of God. Just as there are personal aspects of God that we can experience within us, God is also the impersonal, regardless who the person is, regardless of race, color, creed, regardless of nationality, regardless of where you live on the planet. If you are outside those laws, you're outside the law. And this is a consequence of being outside the law. And that is the law of cause and effect. And so we have to realize is that we are first cause. God is first cause. We are the co-creator with God. And in the process of being co-creator on this planet that we live on, God gives us free will. That's why we are the co-creator. And so we have this power, this energy to create certain things into our lives or bring certain things into our lives. But we have to be really careful about what we're bringing into our lives. We have to monitor and be aware of our thoughts, our feelings, our reactions, our memories, our history, and knowing that all that's coming together to create certain things and the effects of things, the effects of what we see lining up in our life, why certain things happen to us. I'm not going to sit here to say I know all the reasons why things happen to us. I think it's kind of in the cosmic scheme of things. God knows, but I don't necessarily know that. But I know this much is that if we are able to master certain thoughts, feelings, reactions, experience that happen, we move up in vibration. We move up in vibration. And when we move up in vibration, we're able to see things from a different vantage point. It's just like when you're on a hill versus on a mountain. On a hill, you only can see certain things. On a mountain, you can see so much more. There's a greater immensity that is given to our view than we had when we were just on the hill. And what God wants us to be is to be masters over ourselves and be able to walk the terrain, whatever each person's terrain is, up the mountain to see the greatness of God and also the greatness of her presence and Father, Mother God in our lives. Just because we're in a fog, as we're walking up the mountain, we're in a fog and we think God doesn't exist or, this is the wrong path or I don't know what I'm doing here. There is some measure of faith when we're trying to do our best and we're trying to be aware of the different concepts, precepts that are given to us in terms of God's laws. There is a certain degree of faith that we have to know and hold on to. If we're doing things that are honorable, that are valid, that are truth-giving, and that are helping other people and appreciative and gratitude, all this helps us to walk out of the fog into higher elevations of our awareness of God and what God is trying to show in our life and giving us direction. Now, with all that being said, I do believe there are angels that exist that are there to help us, especially if we call upon them. I remember when I was in my early 20s, I had ordered a book from the UK, England, and it was about angels. And I think I mentioned this in one of my earlier podcasts. And I was curious about angels. And when I was reading about all the different types of angels, And then there was a story about how this man never called upon his angel. He went through different experiences. He had different upsets that happened to him in his life. He had certain losses that happened, but he never called upon God. So the angel was like walking with him, beside him, never being called upon for help. All that angel could do, because we live on a planet of free will, was to walk beside him. But the angel was so much wanting for this particular man to say, God help me. God help me, show me the way. Help me through this situation. Guide me. Because we live on a planet of free will. And in the process of living on a planet for free will, we have to ask God's intervention in our life. And when we ask that, then we become co-creators more actively with God. Otherwise, we assume that what you heard me talk about, the ego persona. And the ego persona is all about me. I can do it. I don't need anyone's help. I will do it. I will prove it. I will show it that I can do it. And that will get you, but it will get you far sometimes. It will get you to being successful. But what those who are walking a spiritual path, who want to have an attunement with God, with Christ, with Buddha, with Atman, I am present, the Creator, then you're aware of the fact that all energy that you use is from God. Even the person who doesn't believe in God, they're still using God's energy. They might be using it right, but those who are on a spiritual path want to learn how to use God's energy in the right way. And that requires conversation with your inner self, being curious and inquisitive, being willing to read and to be the Bible, or be hearing a sermon, or be it a meditation, or learning more about what this concept of God is and how am I a co-creator with God. As I'm a co-creator, that means I'm bringing things into existence. And am I bringing the things that I want into existence? That's part of it. But the other part of this is when you're a co-creator with God, you have to surrender all to the glory of God. You say, okay, because God knows far more than what we know. We may think we want this in particular thing over here, but God may say it's not the right timing for the thing over here. Your timing right now is to focus on your current situation that you're trying to learn and master. Whatever that may be, from work to relationships to personal expectations, that God will always be working with us alongside of us to try to help to give the experiences that we need for soul growth and evolution. And once we are more attuned to this special aspect that exists within us, the spirit spark that exists within us, when we're more attuned to that and we're more curious and asking for God's awareness of himself in us, our soul, then God starts to show himself to us. We start having a great awareness of what we need to do. We get these aha experiences. Oh, yeah, that's what I need to do. Have you ever had the experience when you were thinking about something and you prayed about it before going to bed, and you woke up and you had the answer? You knew what you needed to do, and you did it, and it worked out perfectly. It's like, wow, that was right on the mark. When you have those experiences because you called on God, you didn't let it go through sleep and let the angels work on it. And then you have a greater awareness of what that next step may be. And sometimes what we have, as one of my guests said, is we have to be aware of if God is playing hide and seek. He's hiding and we are the seekers seeking him. And it's because he wants to know, do you really want to know me? Do you really want to be in attunement with me? Then you will seek me. And when you find me, then that is your gold. That is your gold. getting back to the story. So the man kept on and kept on living his life. And guess what? He died, never asking for guidance or for direction. And so that was not only a missed opportunity for the man, but it also was a missed opportunity for the angel, who really, his guardian angel, who really wanted to help him in that lifetime. We have to realize that I don't believe that we're put on this earth and we're destitute. That we have to be here all by ourselves. I think there's many angels that are here to try to support and guide us. There's many, such as Jesus, and Buddha, which are my two that I like to talk a lot about. Or there's also in the Eastern tradition, Kuan Yin as well, besides Buddha. Just as in the Western tradition, there is also Mary, the mother of Jesus. All are trying to show us ways of walking the path. All of us are trying to show what we're here to do and not get caught up in the illusions and delusions of me, mine. That this is all about me and all of these things are mine. And because you know what? Dust to dust, ashes to ashes. We enjoy the things that are around us, but we shouldn't be overly attached to them because it's temporal. And that's one of the things that we have to be more and more aware of, is that social media will always trying to get us attached to something. It's like addiction, a dopamine rush. They always go back to that particular social media site, or go back to that particular person who's talking about something, sensationalism, or whatever it may be. But the role of the soul and soul growth and progress is you see it, you're aware of it, you can go through it, whatever experience, but those experiences that you're going through are just as learning lessons, teaching you to how that the ultimate direction that we need in our life is from within to without, not out to in. Moving from within ourselves, anchored in the soul, anchored in an awareness that there's a vastness that exists within us, just as much as there's a vastness in the universe. And that vastness that exists within us is what we're trying to learn is being comfortable in who we really are. Being comfortable in who we really are. And that is being comfortable knowing that you're a co-creator with God. Being comfortable in knowing that you're here to be able to help, serve, give, and at the same time, personally grow. Grow into being your best self. Grow into understanding that things are not always happen the way we want them to happen. But for whatever reason, we get a curveball. We have things that happen that, are painful or difficult. And it's not a matter if it's painful or difficult. That's not the issue. It's how we react to it, how we handle it, how we deal with those situations. How do we think about these situations with our soul and mind? How do we ask for guidance and direction? Those are the things that the Lord wants us to be aware of. We are placed on this planet for the experiences in order for us to be able to have a greater and greater and greater awareness of who we really are and not get caught up in this illusion and delusion in the world. Not get caught up in thinking that you have to do it all by yourself. Being aware that taking still time, I've talked about in previous episodes, taking still time and just anchoring in the quietness and in the awareness that God is a loving God. It's not a punitive God. And being aware of the fact that our soul needs to be nurtured, needs to be cared for. We need to have conversations like that book, Conversations with God, but we also need to have conversations with our soul. The more that we awaken our soul, the more that our soul now tries to work consciously and intentionally with us through inspiration, through following your hunches, or being more attuned to the awareness that, oh, I need to do this in this situation. Or, better for me to say no in this situation, even though I may not really want to say entirely no, but there's something that's telling me I don't need to go down that road. Just say no for now and see what happens. And then you know what? It's the best decision you could have made, because that no that you said over there opened another door for you to follow and go down in terms of your career path or in terms of the relationship that you wanted. By following our inner self and being more and more attuned to that inner self, we are able to grow exponentially. We are able to move up to the top of that mountain. It doesn't mean there's not going to be another mountain for us to move on, but for that mountain, we were able to conquer certain things, gain mastery over certain things. And that is what life is all about. It is through the mastery that we also maintain a degree of harmony. And it's in that harmony that we are able to listen and be in listening grace to our heart and our soul about what we need to do in certain situations that we find ourselves in. Those are all things to think about. And I have so much more to say as we pass the 100th episode into the next level. It's a completion in some ways, or hundreds. And then I'm going to go to the next 100 to 200 episodes. But what I have found is by my doing these episodes, it allows me to really take some percolating time, is what I like to call it. Percolating over what I want to talk about. What would be helpful for people to listen to? What is it that I've learned through some of my experiences? And what does the Lord want me to say? What is Jesus, the Christ, the Buddha, the spiritual leaders that are not necessarily, physically with us, but I think vibrationally, they are always with us, that help to guide people to be their best self. Bye for now. Thank you, seekers. Thank you for your continued faithfulness in listening to this podcast. I am so much appreciative. And you know what? If you've had some certain episodes or guests that you found really, really helpful and help you to think things through in a different way, please let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts. We had some wonderful guests on who have really talked about people pleasing. They've talked about how to raise spiritually gifted children. They've talked about understanding their perspective about what they learned about themselves as they were growing and evolving that allowed them to move in their particular career direction. That talked about how they have come to be who they are and what they've learned in their life journey. I would love to hear what guest episode you found to be really helpful to you. And it's been a great 100 episodes, and I look forward to doing more. Bye for now. Take care.
Thank you for joining me for this episode on Mastering Life's Adventures, being your best self through soul evolution. If you have enjoyed what you've heard today, I would be delighted if you would share this episode with others, leave a thumbs up, and subscribe to my Mastering Life's Adventures podcast. Look forward to your joining the next episode. Please leave any comments or suggestions you might have below. Bye for now.